took me from 1947 till 1950 to get to America. And when I came to this country, I don't think that any born American was a greater patriot than I was.
One Sunday I went into the grocery store, and I didn't even realize he was there. There's this guy standing and looked absolutely gorgeous with these beautiful, striking white teeth, you know, which I thought were false. They were so gorgeous. And my friend introduces us. And I said, "How do you do?" And he said something in Hungarian. And I said, "Nice to have met you." And I walked out of the store, and that was it. And after I left, my friend tells me, he said to her, "You see that girl? That's the girl I'm going to marry." And she told me this. I said, "This guy is not normal. I mean, forget it. I want nothing to do with this person." You know, I figured this is not a normal way to react. I hadn't really consented to marry him till he promised that he would become Orthodox. He came from a very Orthodox background, and he knew everything. It's just that he became a non-believer. I always knew that I was living with a survivor, always. He'd have very bad dreams. This same recurring nightmare that he was back in this bunker, as he called it, and that the Germans were catching him. I think he conjured up all sorts of horrible ways that his parents died, which was just terrible to live with, something like that. But they stopped after a while, I think. Or maybe he just didn't tell me about it.
I felt that I'm trapped and there is no way out. Where is there to go? There was no place to go. There was no place to hide as a Jew. Everybody hates you. But what future could a young man have?
He didn't see a very bright future for the Jewish people after what he had gone through, and after all the history of the Jews, which he knew a lot of. And he just felt, you know, what's the point of bringing a child into the world? But, I mean, I would have none of that. I said, I will not live without children. I just wouldn't. But of course, once Yossi was born, he was hooked. That was it. He was ecstatic. His whole life became a parenthood. He'd get up for the feeding during the night. He'd diaper the baby. He'd come home from work, and if I had bathed him, he'd be very upset. This was something he looked forward to all day. He wanted to constantly teach him.
I was his pupil. Who else did my father have who would listen to him? I was a captive audience.
From the time he was a little baby, and he'd say, "Daddy, tell me a story." We had to tell him a story before he went to bed. And the stories my husband would tell him, his bedtime stories were, you know, about the Jews in Europe, the Holocaust. And I would read him the, you know, Dr. Seuss books.
I'd lie down there and just waiting to hear some kind of stories that'll make me sleep peacefully, and he would just start telling me about this hole that he dug and being chased and people being rounded up and these two pictures on the wall of his parents and how they were killed, and
how normal everything was, and then gradually what started happening, and you know, about my grandparents, and just really pretty much everything that went on during the Holocaust.
We were just so aware of it without even talking about it. Just the fact that they had one set of grandparents, or that they had any grandparents when all their friends had none.
I have friends who are also children of survivors, but it wasn't really talked about openly for whatever reasons. Either the parents just couldn't deal with it. It was too painful for them. But you know, my father always discussed it with us. He wanted us to know.
If they will not be prepared or not know about our past tragedies.
Emotionally prepared.
Emotionally.
They should be emotionally prepared.
They should be emotionally prepared what happened and how it happened.
When I was younger, I idolized him. I always looked at him as being larger than life. just the fact that he had survived when so few others had. He knew every step of the way what to do. And I always felt, well, I have to know every step of the way too what to do. And could I do it? And growing up, I just wasn't at all sure.